There's no doubt that inflammation is the bane of modern society. The top avoidable diseases like heart disease and cancer, they all begin with inflammation. The good news is that you can reduce inflammation immediately by making these changes. Most people are highly inflamed and they don't even know it. When I tell patients that they have an inflammation problem, I hear all the time, "No, I don't. My joints don't hurt." But inflammation is far more than just an inflamed joint. When I talk about inflammation, I'm referring to the 40+ trillion cells in your body becoming inflamed and unhealthy. High amounts of inflammation at a cellular level are not only correlated to chronic disease, they're also linked to everyday health problems that you would think have nothing to do with inflammation. Some examples of this would be problems like leaky gut, insulin resistance, skin rashes, or maybe even brain fog. You too may have inflammation. Why is this? Well, it's because the foods that you buy every day in your grocery store that are deemed safe by the FDA, in fact, are not safe at all. These foods that you are eating are the cause of inflammation. But it's not just you. When you start thinking about foods that really bring us together, we think of hamburger and fries, hot dogs and caramel corn at the ballpark. We think of ice cream on a hot summer day, pizza with our friends, or maybe even popcorn at a movie. You get the picture. When we think of these unhealthy foods in fun times, we fail to realize how connected they are to a sad story that we know all too well. And that's our loved ones who have died from inflammatory diseases. My grandfather who died from cancer, my wife's grandfather who died from heart disease and diabetes. I recently just had a patient who I've taken care of since the inception of my career who died of cancer. These stories are our reality if we do not make intentional steps to change the way that we're eating today. So hit the thumbs up button if you're ready to avoid the top 5 inflammatory foods. Number 5 on our list is going to be a food that almost everyone eats, even those who think that they're making better choices in their diet. And this is bad fats. Bad fats include vegetable oil, canola oil, margarine, and even soybean oil. Now, these chemically altered fats go by many names, but typically when you see them on labels, they're going to be labeled as hydrogenated oil or partially hydrogenated oils. Now we have to really look out for these because if we go out to a restaurant, pretty much any fried food will be using these bad fats. But also beyond that, you're gonna really find them in prepackaged foods and a lot of the foods that you see at the grocery store, so you have to read those labels. These unhealthy oils are loaded with omega-6s, and these omega-6s, well, they cause an inflammatory reaction in the body, and they also cause our body to become omega-6 dominant. And this is why when people consume omega-3s, what happens is you balance out those ratios, omega-6 to omega-3, and you feel so much better for it. Now, some healthy oils that we can look to are gonna be coconut oil, avocado oil. We can even use olive oil and grass-fed butter. Now, if we're going to heat the oil, we have to make sure that we're using a temperature stable oil to cook with. So a high temperature oil that we could use is going to be coconut oil or avocado oil. And if we just want to heat something at a very low temperature, grass-fed butter and olive oil are great for that. The next food that you have to avoid that causes a tremendous amount of inflammation in the body is going to be grains. Whenever I'm working with somebody who has a health condition that they want to overcome, I tell them you have to avoid grains. Many people are consuming pasta and cereal, bread and bagels and all the grains that we shouldn't be eating. And I have people say to me all the time, "Dr. Zyrowski, I grew up eating grains. We ate them all the time and they were never a problem. Why is this such an issue now?" Well, the problem is really twofold. The first big problem is that the overconsumption. People are just eating a tremendous amount of grains today. But honestly, that's the lesser of the two problems. The bigger problem today is how processed these grains are. Think of your typical bleached white flour. During the growing process of these grains, they're sprayed multiple times with neurotoxins such as herbicides and pesticides. And then on top of that, these crops are mostly GMO anymore. And because they're genetically modified, our body bodies reject them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you are suffering from a health condition, I recommend removing grains in its entirety from your diet. However, if you're happy with your health and you're not suffering from a health condition, then you can look to using sprouted ancient grains as a healthier alternative. And a good example of this would be an Ezekiel bread, which you can pretty much pick up at any grocery store today. Number 3 on our list of highly inflammatory foods is going to be sugar. Sugar goes by over 200 different names on labels. It also is pretty much put in everything today. I mean, this is why the average person is consuming over 120 pounds of sugar per year. And the big problem is the highly processed sugars like high fructose corn syrup, which directly stimulates the inflammatory cascade, causing a lot of health problems for you, compared to more natural sugars like honey. Some of the foods that we really have to watch out for will be the sweetened beverages, the candies, the prepackaged foods, and also the obvious ones like desserts. But at any time, if you have a sweet tooth craving, one of the things you can do is just have some fresh berries. It's an excellent alternative compared to these sweetened, high sugar foods that decay our bodies. You also should know that sugar is a drug to our bodies, and so we crave it tremendously whenever we try to quit it. So if you have any top tips that you want to share with us down in the comments about how you overcame your sugar addiction, go ahead and put it in there. And what I'll do is I'll pin the top comment. Number 2 on our list of highly inflammatory foods is going to be dairy milk. And before I go any further, I want to make it very clear that I am not anti-dairy, but we just shouldn't be gulping down gallons and gallons of milk as a society. Some experts believe that upwards of 70% of people are negatively impacted from drinking dairy milk. And it's my own observation that most people, despite having really negative reactions and gastrointestinal upset, they continue to drink it anyway. But having an upset stomach is not the only common sign of inflammation. There's some others that you should really watch out for. There are things like stiff joints, limited range of motion, chronic pain, so you just have pain everywhere, swelling, fatigue, weight loss resistance, so no matter what you do, you just can't seem to lose weight, unhealthy skin, you're getting a lot of rashes or acne, and even cognitive impairment. And though these symptoms seem small right now, over time, they will dramatically decrease your quality of life. So that's why you're here watching this video, and I'm helping you identify the top inflammatory foods that you have to avoid. Now, as you look to dairy alternatives, one of my favorites is going to be almond milk. That's pretty much all we use in my house. And just as a quick side note, if you use almond milk over dairy milk, you will dramatically decrease your calorie consumption, which will in turn help you lose a lot more weight. Now, the next top foods that we must avoid are going to be the grain-fed meats and the processed meats. When we look to grain-fed meats, the reason that they're a big problem is because they have a high omega-6 content in them. And as we learned about the bad cooking oils and the bad fats, is that high omega-6 content is going to throw off our body's natural fatty acid ratios, and as a result, it will spike inflammation. Now, as we look to the processed meats, we're looking at poor quality meats like ham, bacon, sausage, smoked meats, and even jerky. And these meats have something known as advanced glycation end products, which have been shown in the research to actually drive inflammation in the body. Now, this is where things get tricky. We talked about the top inflammatory foods, but there's something known as toxic food syndrome. Toxic food syndrome is where any food that your immune system deems to be dangerous activates the inflammatory cascade, causing harm to your body. This could be food like spinach and blueberries, something that is otherwise and normally very healthy. To identify these foods that may be toxic to you, these healthy foods that could be toxic to you, you can keep a food journal and write them down. And as you identify that you have low energy, or maybe you had a lot of bloating or a poor reaction, what you can do is you can take those foods out of your diet for a period of time and then reintroduce them back in after a 4-week period. Some ways that you can reduce inflammation through daily activities include things like regular exercise, a really good quality night's sleep, also focusing on reducing stress. You know, many people don't know this, but a stressful day at the office or even a heated argument with a significant other can spike inflammation in your body. As always, it's been a pleasure educating you on how you can take control of your health naturally. Now, I recommend that you watch this video over here next on how you can do a simple at-home inflammation test right here.